Welcome everyone to our webinar. We're very excited to be presenting to you today what we've been doing and what we've been seeing in the industry around AI and adoption. We're hoping to share data that we've collected, frameworks that we've been building, and best case practices that we've seen implemented across organizations that we work with. With that, I'd like to invite Saood to kickstart the webinar and give us an introduction. Over to you, Saood.
Thank you, Khyaati, and once again, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking your time out to be part of this experience, this webinar. And what you're going to experience in the next 60 minutes is right in front of you, where we give you an overview of the kind of work KNOLSKAPE does, the kind of problems we solve, how we go about solving them, what challenges we see with our client stakeholders, our partner ecosystem when it comes to AI implementation, measuring the impact of AI and everything that is happening around it. And we'll also see some successful case studies, some best case practices where we have learned how do we go about doing point number 3 and solving for the challenges. So we'll be happy to share some of those case studies with you. And yes, of course, we'll keep it interactive. That's how this is going to become a nice learning experience rather than a one-way conversation where you have a lot of questions, you share your thoughts, your feedback. You want to debate something, happy to accommodate all of that. So yes, let's get started. Khyaati.
Absolutely. So I'd start by introducing myself. Everyone, my name is Khyaati Jain, and I look after strategic initiatives and partnerships at KNOLSKAPE. And I've been working very closely with our business team, our consulting team, and our partners on AI implementation. So I'll be sharing a little bit more about that today. Thank you, Saood.
Thank you. And my name is Saood. I lead the European and North American business for KNOLSKAPE based in the UK. Been with KNOLSKAPE for almost 12 years, served in different parts of the world, India, Malaysia for the APAC region, and now in the UK, front-ending our initiatives in growing our European and North American business. That is a bit about us. Now, moving on. A quick background of who we are, where we are, and what we do. So we are one of the world's largest experiential HR technology company. We are present in 20 plus companies. We have around close to 160 happy employees, and we have a very wide portfolio of experiential learning solutions which are there off the shelf. Organizations have been using it since the last decade and a half. Experiential offerings, and we have one of the widest network of facilitators, coaches spread across the world. And all our products, our solutions, our simulations, they lend themselves well for translation as well, given the kind of organizations we work, which are global. And all these solutions can be translated, can be made available in any language of your choice. And a sneak peek into the kind of organizations that we work with. This is an indicative list. We have been fortunate enough to gain the trust of more than 400 large organizations globally, Fortune 100 companies, cutting across different industries, right from BFSI, manufacturing, consulting, public sector organizations, and many, many other kind of industries. And so that's a bit about the kind of clients that we work with, and a bit of industry validation helps to win trust. So we have won different kinds of industry awards, and something we're also very proud of is us getting covered by Harvard Business Review. It's a case study about how we go about solving all the problems that we solve. So it's an interesting case study. Have a look if you can. Now, this is the problem we are after, and this is a nice segue into this, the larger conversation that we are going to have around AI. What we have observed, learned, good way, hard way, along with our clients, along with our partners, is that training exists. But does that translate into performance readiness? Does performance readiness translate into business results? So that's a question we have been asking, and so far there has not been clear answer. But what we have understood for sure is training and learning is happening in every organization, but are they really building readiness? So if you are to build performance readiness, if you are to build capabilities that translate into business results, it has to be an orchestrated approach, an orchestrated capability building across the employee life cycle, because more often than not, people get onboarded, they go through some form of training, which is important to them. And then there are ad hoc leadership development interventions or managerial development interventions. And learning is treated more often than not as an event, but that's not how we build readiness, right? So, and capability, is living in silos. Different people are going through different kinds of training interventions, but there is no real impact being measured in alignment with the business impact that you're trying to achieve, right? So that's where you need a system which is always on. It is not time bound. It is not limited to any particular career level. And then we see this, and you know this as well as we do, billions of dollars globally go into acquiring content libraries, content platforms, and everybody's expected to go through a lot of learning, and then unfairly enough expected to perform just based on those kind of content that are being provided, right? So that's a training trap, as we call it, and we all have been victims of it in some point in time. And then there is an upsurge of all the platforms, which are great to create some sort of a synergy, but content again is distributed. There is no connection to real world. There is barely any connection to business impact, and working backwards from there. And we also see, I'm sure many of you will agree, that there is some sort of a platform fatigue that is coming in, because there used to be HRMS, there are LMS, and now they are pivoting to learning experience platforms. And within that, you're able to do a lot of, there's a layer of AI within that. So there is some sort of platform fatigue. And these are some of the three reasons. These are, obviously not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the reasons we realize that why is learning or training not translating into performance. And that's how we intend to solve this for our clients. Okay, to build capabilities, we and organizations need a solid skills foundation. So they have skills identified, they know what to do, and how we go about doing this is breaking it down into two pillars, two wide pillars. One is capability readiness, and the other is execution readiness. So within capability readiness, we call it foundational skills. That is, regardless of the role you are in, regardless of the industry you are in, these are some of the skills that you need to build. You need to have a solid understanding of, be it leadership readiness, succession planning and identifying high potentials, doing the right assessments, performance reviews, how do you coach, and the whole gamut around it. Then moving on to digital and AI readiness, we solve this through our digital and AI academy, where we are not just focusing on the easy part, which is the AI tools and AI skills, but starting off from how do you build the right digital mindsets, how do you build the right AI mindset, because as you'll agree, building skill sets and tool sets are relatively easier than building mindsets. So we start off at that level with our digital and AI readiness academy, which is all experiential. And then you have everything around building customer centricity, customer readiness, be it around sales, account management, consulting. So these are the capabilities, and we use a lot of our off-the-shelf experiences to build these capabilities at a continuous basis. Again, it's not an event. We use these experiences continuously over the entire employee life cycle. And on the right side, you have execution readiness. This is where we use our custom platform, where we are able to create and orchestrate something bespoke for our organizations, our clients, where we are building something very specific for them. It could be around their organization, their industry, be it compliance, DEI, regulatory, content, be it anything. We take that and build immersive experiences out of them, be it culture, values, which are typically enrolled through rudimentary forms of content. So we take that and we build immersive experiences around it, and then we go deeper into building domain readiness. It could be understanding of your industry, your company, and something very close to the domain the employee is in. And then how do you translate that domain knowledge into role readiness, right? So depending on the role, which you can think of it like day in the life of, it could be an analyst, it could be a consultant, it could be a scientist, it could be anybody, right? So how do we replicate their roles into safe learning environments where they have the luxury of learning making mistakes if they have to in a safe learning environment, like a sandbox environment, right? So capability readiness is all the foundational skills. Execution readiness are built through our custom platform, where we are able to take your content and build different experiences around it. So this is how we work in tandem in building these capabilities. Let's do a short poll. Would love to hear from you. As I mentioned, the more interactive it is, the more useful it's going to be for all of us. Can you all take 10 seconds to help us with this?
Absolutely. And just tell us what the challenge is, right, in terms of AI implementation within your organization right now. And by people, we mean the workforce and the people that are actually using the AI. So we'd love to hear from you, get your thoughts. And for those of you that also want to share why that's a problem, please feel free to leave comments in the chat. We want to make sure that when we're asking each other questions, Saood and I were also getting your insights and inputs on what y'all are doing. So we're at about half of y'all have responded. We're going to give it another 20 seconds. All right, I think we can call it and look at the results. I'm very interested to see what the audience has to say to us today. So, Saood, any thoughts on what we're seeing on our screen? There's tools, which is the lowest. That's good to see. But with use cases and people, what's your read on the results that we have?
Yeah, this is actually not surprising, because organizations, they know which tools to pick, right? So tools are rarely a problem.
Yeah.
But while I'm talking of tools, the catch with tools is not the availability, but the use cases, which is what all the panelists are also talking about. That okay, we know the tools, but how do we deploy those tools? And adoption is, to be honest, in my opinion, a vanity metrics, right? Okay, it's no more that 70% adoption, 80% adoption. Yeah. The board, the CEOs are not asking about your adoption of AI, they're asking about business impact, right? So how do you identify the right problem and then deploy the tool? Because AI, at the end of the day, is an enabler, right? So how do you use that enabler in solving your real business problems, identify the right use cases, and then use AI? So AI is not the end, it's a means to achieve that end, right? So absolutely agree with what most of the panelists are talking about, that use cases, identifying use cases and working towards those use cases with AI is blocking, where getting value in the organization. People, of course, is the biggest factor in any initiative success or lack of it, right? So when we say people, we talk about how ready they are. One is how ready they are in terms of capabilities. And before capabilities, there is something called intent. How do you build the right intent within your organization, right? So how do you define what's in it for your people? Why should they bother about signing up or using so-and-so tool that you have bought from so-and-so vendor? So identifying what's in it for you, getting the intent of the people right. So as long as you're building the intent within people, learning performance will flow with minimal intervention. So yes, it's I think it's a nice mix. It is not mutually exclusive. There are all the three, all three reasons are fair, but yeah, we see use cases as a larger blocker in unlocking value.
Absolutely. I think Jain also kind of mimics that, where he's like, we're running capability programs, but then people aren't able to convert to kind of unpack why that's happening as well. So let's move on. Every year at KNOLSKAPE, we run this beautiful exercise where we reach out to all our clients, all our partners, and ask them what's going on, what's working for them, what's not working for them. And that is published every year as our L&D predictions report, right? And last year, we interviewed 400 plus enterprises around the world across all geos. And what we found was very interesting. To respect to AI adoption within your organization, or scaling AI within your organization. And we had on 5% of 400 enterprises, we've been able to scale our AI initiatives and productize this across the board. And what's interesting is last year, Stanford and McKinsey also did research and came up with the same number, where they had about 5 to 7% people that organizations that have been able to productize AI. Now, Saood, my question to you here is, we're not going to focus on the 5%. You're on the ground, you're speaking to organizations day in and day out. What about the rest, right? The 85, 90% of organizations that are kind of in the mix. What are they getting wrong, according to you? What's your hunch?
Sorry. Yeah, so from my experience, what I see is there is a mandate from the board, from senior management, that, hey, we need to leverage AI to solve XYZ problems, which are real, right? How do you solve those problems efficiently? How do you solve them faster? And how do you make sure that those problems don't occur, right? These are largely the mandates senior management is giving to the executive team. Because of this, because there is a mandate of AI to use AI to solve those problems, there is a rush to introduce tools directly, right? Instead of challenging, the senior management or the mandate back that, okay, does it have to be used through AI and AI alone, right? And understanding, okay, what are the budgetary constraints around it? Because once you have the board's mandate, you get the budgets to procure tools and train people, and all of that happens. But now we are seeing the compute cost is going up, right? It was not as, it was not thought through that once we procure this, one, how do we drive adoption? How do we connect it to business problems? Is this cost dynamic? And people are waking up to a root shock that the cost is not dynamic. It is not static. It is dynamic, right? Yeah. So it is rushing into solving a problem without understanding how do you connect this to real world problems? How do you tie into the larger business impact? And secondly, are your people ready? What kind of skills are you building? If you're talking of building AI readiness, do you have the skills ontology with you? If you don't have it, how do you identify what AI skills do I build within the organization? What teams are less ready? What teams are more ready, right? Because AI readiness is not a blanket statement that entire organization is here, right? So there are different teams that are at different journeys within implementation of AI. Some could be innovators, and within the same organization, there will be some teams which are laggards, right? So how do you personalize this, right? So, but what we see is, okay, there is a tool set mindset. Let's subscribe to Copilot. Let's subscribe to Claude, and and the likes. And now employees are expected to demonstrate results, right? So that again becomes an unfair expectation from them, and then the budgets get cut, and then there is rationalization of AI tools. So it's a crust and tough versus figuring out the business problem, making sure that the people have the right intent. We know what we are solving, and then using AI to solve those problems instead of AI being the be all end all of all the initiative that they have.
Couldn't agree more. And even for the audience, I mean, do tell us where you are and what you're doing differently, or what's working for you in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's move on to the usual suspects, right? So Saood, when we get into client conversations and we ask them, hey, what's not working for you? There's 3 answers that I get across the board, right? There's the tool's bad, we picked the wrong tool. So Copilot really gets the brunt here, right? Everyone's like, hey, it's not giving me the right answers. I don't like it. Hallucinations a close second. And use cases you mentioned as well, right? Maybe identification of use cases is also a little bit of a challenge. So when you get into client conversations, or when you're looking at AI transformation projects with your clients, which one do you hear the most? And what's your response generally?
It's usually the tools that get credit for. When all this was going live, then everybody was excited that, hey, we are launching XYZ AI tool. We have Copilot and we have a subscription to OpenAI and ChatGPT. So there was a lot of excitement around tools. And then when rubber hit the road, when adoption was not the metric the board was asking, and results were being checked and analyzed, that is it translating into business results, they went back to discrediting the tools, right? So in my experience, tools are not good. They're not bad. They are there for you to use. And Khyaati, you must have seen, right? A decade ago, we had the social media analytics and cloud, and then, which was a great, use case back then. And then we had the digital transformation era way back in 2018 to 22. And now we have AI transformation, and then there was Gen AI in between, and then there's going to be AGI. So this will come, this will, all the use cases, all the trends will go, but what will not change is how do you make sure these trends or these tools or these products are solving first your people problems. When I say people problems, their capabilities. Are they building the right capabilities using these tools, or these tools are just there for you to talk about in your quarterly meetings? But yeah, it's coming back to your question. It's usually the tools that are tempting to blame. But I think more and more we see these tools getting used, right? We're also seeing a positive trend in not only their adoption, but how well are organizations able to use it, because you can't subscribe to a tool and then expect 100% efficiency from all the teams at the same time. Different teams go through it differently. So patience is being built within organizations. And that is building resilience in organizations, that we need to give these tools, the use cases, a bit more time, because you can't pick a use case, use AI, and oh, here it is, it's fixed. So, but yeah, that's a positive trend. I'm seeing that more time is being given to these tools so that they move into solving the use cases. Hallucinations, those are some of the exceptions, right? So I see a lot of large language models getting blamed. Many large consulting companies are having to pay back their customers, but that's a reverse survivorship bias, as I see it. Those are some of the exceptions, but net, there is a positive impact of all these tools and solutions.
Agree. And I think with hallucinations, right, what I hear is a model can't be trusted, but that's not the point. The point is your people need to be able to kind of make that judgment. The model will hallucinate. It is a large language model. It predicts what your next word is going to be, and it's going to be wrong. So I think that's the mindset that we kind of go into these conversations with. But let's look at another very interesting framework that we've been using with our clients when we kind of diagnose where they are in their journey. And what you're seeing on the screen, everyone, is called the J curve. I know it doesn't look like a J, it looks like just a curve, but it's a private equity investment model, and it lends itself beautifully to AI transformation, AI adoption, and ROI and impact that you can get within the enterprise from using AI. Right? So stage one is curiosity. And I think a lot of organizations are past this stage right now, where we've kind of started looking at what the tool can do, or what AI can do within our teams, right? It could be a free license, or it could be something that you're paying for. Investment is generally when leadership bites the bullet, says, okay, let's put a little bit of money in, let's run a couple of pilots. And the dip is what we call the pilot trap, right? Where organizations have invested heavily, but they're not seeing the kind of outcomes. And like you said, Saood, boards are getting really angsty. They're like, where is the money? Where's the impact? C-suite is saying, hey, we've laid off so many people, but like my token costs have gone up. So all sorts of challenges with ROI and impact. Recovery is generally when organizations figure out what they're doing wrong and what needs to be done to course correct this. Impact is essentially where I start seeing large scale ROI from the usage of these tools. Now, for the audience, I'd love to hear from you in the chat what you think, where you think you are in this journey. But Saood, I don't know if organizations can avoid the dip, or if there are certain people in the audience that are maybe at stage 1 and 2. What, according to you, are some telltale signs that they're headed into the dip, so that they can kind of preempt it and maybe avoid loss of investment in the way that they traditionally would have had?
One is senior leadership not owning any AI KPI. So if leadership owns no AI KPI, AI will not own any business outcomes, right? So, and when you're talking of the pilot trap, it is how well is senior leadership aligned with how you're going to use AI, right? Because at that level, and AI is not just a mass tool that you can use. It has many regulatory concerns, right? For example, how you use AI or not use AI in European Union countries in EU is different from how you use in North America versus how you use in other parts of the world, right? So it's very important that the senior leadership, which is aware of the rule of law when it comes to AI, and based on those guardrails, start using AI in a more controlled manner, right? So instead of that being, carpet bombing everybody that we need to be AI first, we are an AI first company. How do you pick a small problem, do the right pilot, and then scale? There's a case in point with Toyota. They can implement AI where they want, right? But they thought, okay, what do? They manufacture cars. Who drives those cars? People right now, right? Most of them are people. What is important to them? Their lives. How do we save those lives, right? So they have a small problem. They identified one problem, use sensors, predictive analytics into their engines. And as and when the engines are going to get worn out, there are going to be ancillary issues with the car. They are able to predict and inform the customer well in advance and do the recalls at the right time. So it was not, we are going to use AI in every aspect of our car building process, right from procurement to shipping to showrooms. They picked the most important first, small pilot, worked successfully. So it is picking the right problem, which is business critical, mission critical for you, getting the leadership's buy-in, mandate, and their skin in the game.
Couldn't agree more. And we do have two people in the chat who've also told us they're actually in the dip, which we're also seeing quite a lot, right? A lot of our clients, by the time they come to us, they're in the dip. There's a lot of pressure to deliver. And that being said, I think there are a couple of organizations, like you gave Toyota's example, that have avoided the dip, right? And that was because they were very intentional in the way that they used AI. So they kind of evaded the curve and moved almost towards impact in certain cases, right? And something else that they've done really well is they've looked at AI transformation almost as a journey that's going to take some time, as opposed to, okay, in the next 2 years, I need to be AI ready, right? But I'd love to hear from people in the chat as well. Is there anyone who started recovering, anyone who's seeing impact? Do tell us where you are. It's also, a learning exercise for us. But let's talk about the 4 stages of AI transformation, right? We know that a lot of you are in the dip. Some of you are between 1 and 2 as well. When we work with our clients, we largely try and map where they are right now with their ambitions and with their capability, with the other underlying infrastructure that they require to succeed. And there are largely 4 stages that we've kind of identified that help organizations avoid the dip or maybe minimize the impact of the dip, right? And it's largely a digital transformation framework, but it lends itself beautifully again to AI transformation. Now, Saood, when you're working with clients, are there clients that are skipping some of these steps, or do you think everyone's kind of following it?
Absolutely. So strangely enough, we see this pattern in some organizations where they're skipping step number 1, right? Which is understanding, because as I mentioned earlier, adoption is just a vanity metric. It's easy to do if you have a whip coming from senior management, but understanding the skills ontology, identifying the right people to begin with. You need early adopters, you need those innovators, right, to take your solution, socialize it within their teams. So one is understanding what skills need to be built. So that is one. And then how do we go about building them? What is the time we are going to take towards building them? Because it is not time bound that we have to do this within 3 months, because skills, we talk about continuous learning, but when we talk about learning interventions, they somehow come with some pause, right? Or a full stop, and then there is a different cohort identified. So I think understanding what to build, what to assess, with whom to assess at what point in time. Once you have those data and metrics with you, reimagining and adoption and scaling will follow. But yeah, I see this understanding part, because decisions many times are taken in a rush because there is a senior management advisory.
Absolutely. I think I completely agree. And I feel like a lot of clients that I've spoken to in the last year are really skipping to adoption, right? As opposed to thinking, hey, where do I want to use this? How do I want to use this? How do I want to enable my teams? And that's where it becomes a vanity metric. It becomes a metric where people are just like, okay, who's logging in? How many people like prompted the AI today, right? And that I think is wrong. So I would really implore everyone on the call to kind of first really understand what's possible, reimagine what work should be, how roles would change, how leadership will change as an outcome of this, and then move into adoption. And I mean, when we look at capability development for us, it obviously stretches across these 4 stages. Capability development doesn't start at stage 2 or stage 3, it starts at stage 1, and we look at 4 capability pillars, right? You're looking at data, you're looking at understanding the tech, how you work with the tech, innovation, which is unlocking value, and responsible AI, which I think underpins everything that we do with our organizations that we work with. And Saood, is there any place where you think organizations are really over-indexing when it comes to spending time in understanding or building that specific capability or that process within the organization?
It's the I'll answer this differently, right? So what I see is there is a knee-jerk reaction to starting something when it comes to anything around AI, and a knee-jerk reaction to stopping it, right? So they're picking a tool or an initiative at the snap of the finger, rolling it out very easily. When it's not working, okay, this is not working, let's shut this, right? So and then they're trying to figure out something else. So it's always a quest for something else versus figuring out what to do, with whom to do, at what point in time do we make this intervention and continue with it, right? So as soon as something is not working in a silo, things are being shut down, or tools are being blamed, which we spoke about 3 slides earlier. So I think we can avoid the knee-jerk trap and be a bit more intentional about what we're doing with this.
Absolutely. And I do want to focus on, the people and capability bit, because that's what I think our audience is here for. That's what we do really well as well. So I want to talk about how capability kind of runs across this transformation map that we've seen, and what organizations are doing. And this is interesting because this has come to us a few times from a few different clients that we worked with. So I'd love to hear again from everyone in the chat. Has this happened to you, where you're just going about your day, someone from the business unit or your manager or your leader calls you and says, hey, we've got to run a training on AI because adoption is stalling, and I'm not really sure what to do, right? And they L&D is kind of handed this problem and they're saying, you solve it. So do tell us if this is something that's happening to you. And Saood, are you seeing this as well? Because at least in APAC, this is something that I've seen as a trend where L&D suddenly gets the mandate and they're like, okay, solve for this, when it isn't necessarily an L&D problem entirely to begin with.
Yeah, of course. It's global, right, where learning teams and HR teams are expected to solve this very quickly. And they do that efficiently. They also know the bottlenecks with just running a training and hitting a pause. But to their credit, what I also see is you need to start somewhere, right? If it's workshop for some organizations or for some people, so be it. If it's a platform for some organizations, so be it. Learning teams are pushing the envelope, right? They are starting somewhere instead of just mulling over where to start, with whom to start, right? Fixing it is a later problem, but you need to start somewhere, right? So if running a training to begin with is a good start to build that awareness within employees, it's fine. What we do with that workshop, what we do after that, how do we sustain this, and the whole dip part, right? That's a continuous problem. There is no one switch that you turn on and those problems will go away, right? So, but yeah, this happens everywhere. Nobody's insulated from let's run a training or let's do a workshop, or for that matter, let's invite a thought leader in this space just to ignite that interest, right, among people, which are all fine, right? As I mentioned, you have to start somewhere. If it's an external source of influence you need to use, so be it. Internal, okay, you need vendors to help you to do this, fair enough.
Completely agree. I think it's good to start somewhere, but for those of you that are now in this situation, I think it's easier said than done, but moving upstream to where the decision was made, how it was made, what are the repercussions, I think L&D does need a little bit of visibility onto that. So if you can get that, I think that's great. And this one's controversial, Saood. We've gone back and forth on this a few times, right? You've spoken about it also earlier today, where when no one owns the KPI, when no one owns the transformation, it doesn't move forward. And I do believe that that's true. I feel like outside of the CIO, CTO, CSO, there has to be someone within the organization that's kind of owning the mandate. In your experience with organizations that are now starting to do well, and we are seeing a lot of our partners in Europe that are moving further with adoption, right? You're seeing very little standard deviation in scores across the journey when we collect, when we look at surveys. What are they doing differently? And what's your thoughts on ownership on AI KPIs?
While I mentioned that senior leadership need to own AI KPIs, because if they don't own AI KPIs, AI will not own business outcomes. But that is when you are launching, when you are trying to build awareness within the organization. My answer to this is, who owns implementation and outcomes? There is no one unit, there is no one team, there is no one person. Everybody is going to own outcomes, because I think we discussed this the other day, Khyaati, that people are expected to perform better, right? Yeah. With or without a particular tool, right? As long as the results are being met within certain timeframes, it shouldn't matter if it is, you're leveraging AI or digital or something else at your disposal. So people should own and continue to own outcomes, not the implementation of usage of tools. That is, again, as I mentioned, a means to an end. So no one team should own or can own these AI initiatives, because it is like the internet, right? So you want to finish a task using the internet or not finish a task. It so happens that most people ended up using the internet to become more efficient with their work, right? So let people trust your people, build the right intent within the people, give them those outcomes, and they will figure out how to do it, because you are constantly giving them those avenues of upskilling themselves, giving them those safe learning environments for them to fail easily and make lesser mistakes on the job. So we create those environment and let people do the job and own their outcomes. So everybody's going to own it.
I agree. I think in part, it does become an organizational mandate, and I think every leader, every manager then has a part to play. We have Jain in the chat again, who's told us that L&D teams really need to embed and immerse themselves in the actual activity and assist employees in implementation, which is an interesting take, right? But I do want to understand from you, Jain, do you think L&D teams are increasingly becoming very lean, and we see that with the implementations that we do as well. How would you kind of manage this if the team is lean, you don't have the capability to kind of support everyone on this process? So what's your take on this? If you can let us know in the chat, that'll be great. But moving on, I think we've spoken about the problem quite a bit, and we've been able to define that. What I want to do now, Saood, is also speak a little bit more about what that solution looks like when clients come to us. And focus categorically on capability development, because that is one of the reasons we feel AI implementation and adoption within organizations is lagging. People aren't able to kind of identify the right work use cases, aren't able to implement the tools. Managers aren't able to coach and lead effectively in the environment that we're in. And that's where our 4E capability framework kind of comes in, right? It's not rocket science. I know everyone in L&D has seen some version of this, but it works really well for us. And we've done multiple projects, I think, across the world in the last year and a half with AI specifically. And we've gone through this whole process with our clients, and we've actually seen incredible results by the end of it. But even with this, Saood, what's your sense? Are organizations around the world kind of following this process where they're benchmarking, baselining, then teaching, then practicing, and then moving into reinforcement? Or is there something that falls off that's very critical?
Which is unfortunately the first step, where you are trying to understand, or actually not trying to understand, where your employees are in their AI journey. Because as I mentioned, different teams are at different capability levels, different adoption levels, different impact levels within AI. So as long as you don't know what to build, you can't build what really matters, right? So you don't know what you don't know. So towards that, I think a lot of time and the right effort needs to go in understanding, benchmarking, evaluating. You're not assessing your employees. You are just trying to get a lay of the land about who's going to go through what kind of intervention, right? Making it more personal for them, making it more real for them. Because the moment it is not personalized, they don't see, can I apply this in my job next week? If they don't see that connection, it's going to break. So I think taking the right time, it's the good old example of, you have a couple of hours to take down a tree, you spend, 1.5 hours to sharpen your knife or the axe, right? So it's that once, your data is in place, the right data is in place, educating, experiencing, enablement, can follow, which is rather easy to do compared to figuring out what to do.
Couldn't agree more. And with that, I think we move into evaluate and just spend a little bit time speaking about what we do when we do evaluation. And Saood, I also understand that there's a lot of differences in how Europe, North America, and then parts of APAC look at evaluation, right? Where in APAC, it's a big thing. We want to be assessed. We want to be given a score. We want to be told we're good, right? And obviously, regulations kind of don't and culture also kind of doesn't translate the same way in EU. So when you look at evaluation with the market that you're working in, what's your advice to your partners?
Right. It is, again, to begin with, it is not an assessment of employees to impact their job, right? It is to learn what they should be learning better, right? The learning teams and HR teams are trying to learn that what kind of learning should their employees go through. And while assessment and using employee data has its own guardrails here, but this has been going on in European Union as well, in these countries as well. There are assessments going on, there are benchmarking going on, there are surveys going on, and as Khyaati, as what we do this very interestingly is, it is not pen and paper kind of an assessment. We create these experiences which are fun to do, which are non-threatening, right? And those are not assessments per se which will impact their performance, their role within the organization. And they get something very interesting towards the end of it, which they can keep it to themselves, and we can help organizations build a skill map so that they know what kind of skills to be built across different teams. So the whole experience can be non-threatening, it can be fun, it can be immersive instead of using rudimentary tools. So, and yeah, that's the first step. So you land that right, you have your employees' trust.
Absolutely. And we did this very interesting exercise, and we also have a tool in place, right? It's a survey tool called the AI Readiness Quotient that we deployed. We spent actually a year developing this across the 4 capability pillars that you saw earlier on one of the slides. It's 40 questions, very simple, situation-based. We customized this to meet the client's requirements. So, all the situations in the evaluation or the survey are very similar to what would happen in your workplace and, aligned to your policies and ways of working. And we did this with a very large engineering company around a global engineering company. They wanted to kind of assess their entry-level software engineers and understand, survey them actually, and understand where they were, what was working, what was not. And at the end of the survey, every engineer got a report, a very detailed report on what were the capabilities they had, what were the mindsets and behaviors that they needed to work on. And we were able to provide L&D and business leaders also almost this diagnostic of the organization to say, hey, this is what worked and this is what didn't. Outside of that, in a few organizations out, we've also kind of been deploying experiential evaluation tools. So it's almost like a video game when I'm going in, having a conversation, and I'm getting a report at the end of it to say, this is what worked, this is what didn't, and this is what you should do next. So with everyone that's here, I think it doesn't have to be a fancy tool, but do run a survey of some kind where you're able to assess knowledge and mindsets around AI before you move into training. It's very tempting to say, okay, let's do the workshop, but to what end, at what level? You'll realize maybe there's people that already know enough that don't need to be there. So there's many benefits to kind of deploying something around this. Now, the next E, Saood and I have challenges with this one. And my challenge is largely with, L&D teams, organizations that run a workshop and then say, we've done our bit. People need to use it now. What's your sense on what's happening with the educate component, the knowledge transfer component in the market, and what's working, what's not?
Yeah, so the methodology might vary. right? As I mentioned, for some people, it could be a workshop. For some people, it could be giving them some access to a course or a coaching, right? But yeah, as long as they start somewhere, which is good. But having said that, it cannot be an event, right? While learning teams are orchestrators, right? They also can't spoon feed the employees that this is workshop 1, this is workshop 2, you need to show up, this is your attendance. Let's see if you're able to create an impact on your job. No, you are just there to orchestrate, to give them the right environment, interesting environments, if you can, right? And let them do the job. But building awareness that is through education is, it can't be a one-time event. It has to be plugged into an employee's life cycle, that when they are at the job, we talk about learning in the flow of your work, learning in the flow of your day. So how easy it is to access what is important to the employees at the tip of their phones, their workplaces. So making it more accessible, making it more reliant, making it more relevant to their job roles.
Couldn't agree more. And I love the case study that we have for this one. This was a Big Four. We did a pan-India program with them. So these were audit professionals who, about 1,200 of them nationally. And they were really scared, honestly, to use AI because there's so much on the line as well when you look at something like finance and audit, right? One mistake costs your clients. To a point where they didn't want to use tools that the IT team was giving them, was building and giving them. So it wasn't even them using an LLM or a third-party tool that they found. And they came to us and said, listen, they don't know what it is. Applied fluency is obviously a challenge. Can you help us just build confidence? So we really used this whole educate program to build confidence within these 1,200 professionals. And this was across the board, right? Across levels within the organization. And we ran this in multiple locations. Of course, we didn't start at educate. It was all the 4 E's. There was also simulations involved, which is what you're seeing on the screen. And by the end of it, we again ran like a post journey survey, and we saw a very exponential increase in AI literacy and confidence from all the learners. And the interesting part here, Saood, was that these were people that were scared to use tools that IT was giving them. And after the program, IT was flooded with new use cases to a point where they were like, okay, now we need to prioritize what we're going to build for you. We can't build it all. So we really saw this shift, ended up scaling the program as well. So, I mean, to everyone in the audience, if you're also in a situation where your organization's kind of scared to use AI, or your learners are scared to use AI, I think the educate component can also be used to build that safety, that confidence, right? It's a very important step in the process. So that's something else to think about. And now moving on to my favorite E, right, which is what we do, which is why we're here. But with experience, specifically, Saood, something that I see is that a lot of organizations really index on tool training. So they'll run these AI sprints, AI clinics, let's help you build workflows and agents. It's all very technical, right? Even for non-technical professionals. What do you think is required over and above tool training with AI transformation to really make it stick?
Start from the mindset, right? So again, can't mention this enough. Skill sets, tool sets are rather easy to procure, rather easy to build. That how do you fix the mindset part, and then what kind of experiences are you building for them? Because people might forget the content, right? What they remember is what they learned from an experience, right? So what they did, what was the impact? Did they have those aha moments? Did they have those oh no moments, right? Because as people say, right, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. Similarly, when it comes to learning as well, right? So then there is boatloads of content available. You can't expect people to remember all of that. That's why create the right experiences at the right time, which they end up remembering. And how does that memory translate into action? And how does that action translate into an actual impact within the team? So this is the most critical part in an employee life cycle. And again, this cannot be done in a silo. This cannot be, again, an event. This has to be there at their disposal. That do they feel safe enough to go back to the tool or the platform, practice their skill, practice their ways of whatever, the role they are in, feel non-threatened, that this is not the data my employer is going to access all the time. Because I'll just take 30 seconds to talk about this, right? Because one of the fears of this large organization in Germany, manufacturing, the problem they have with adoption is people are scared that, hey, if I ask very basic question to the tool, will it get reported that, hey, you should have known this, but you're still asking very basic questions to the tool. So they have this insecurity of showing their vulnerability when it comes to awareness, right? So create that psychological safety and give them these experiences, these tools, and they'll know what to do.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, Saood, when we launched the AI Academy, right, we kind of internally debated for months on what would be really the core of it, right? And obviously, all our clients were really pushing for tool trading at the time. And we took this decision internally to kind of say, no, we're going to start with behavioral, components, and we're going to start with simulations for AI. And it did take us about 6 months to kind of explain to our clients why we're doing simulations and role plays for AI, which don't necessarily address the tool. But the fact of the matter is, there are managers on the job, there are leaders on the job that need to make decisions day in and day out, which involve AI. There is risk involved, there is capital allocation involved, there is people's lives and safety at stake, like you said, right? Psychological safety. And it's easier to kind of build that with a simulation where you're able to practice, kind of assess those trade-offs, and then move onto the job and do the same thing or do something that will work now. So we have simulations.
Yes. Jain has a very useful and funny story about L&D, but yeah, I'll let people go through the chat. But yeah, Jain, fully with you.
Absolutely. In fact, I asked Saood today, I was like, did you learn to drive with your textbook, or was it with the car? So, that applies to mindset and behavioral skills as well. I need to be able to practice leadership for AI to actually be able to do it on the job. And this is one of my favorite case studies as well, because we worked with a global BFSI organization. And I particularly love BFSI case studies because it's such a highly regulated industry. A lot of things that we do elsewhere cannot be fitted here, right? It requires an entirely different approach. It requires a lot of thought before we go into it. But they had operation managers that had very good baseline awareness of AI and technology. And while interest was really high, they were really scared to drive adoption within their teams. So we did two things, right? We did the benchmarking, baselining. We did a lot of sessions with experts, with thought leaders on what works, what doesn't, what are best case practices. But with experience, we used a twofold method or methodology where we first put them through our simulations to really help them internalize what managing and leading a team in the day and age of AI looks like. What are the different challenges that they might face? What are the kind of questions and concerns that teams might bring to them, and how they should practice managing those or answering those. And there was a very detailed report that came out of the simulation that they then debriefed and reflected on with their coaches and mentors. And after that, we moved into tool training, where we said, okay, let's teach you how to use these enterprise licenses to improve your productivity. You understand how these workflows and agents work. You understand how an LLM can benefit you, and then you go back and start coaching your team on it. This was a small pilot. We started with about 50 people. We ended up scaling to about 200 people. And by the end of it, we had started seeing token usage within the organization that they had never seen before, because these managers were not only using it themselves, but also driving their teams to do it, right? And there was a lot of reinforcement that came just from the managers and the middle level knowing what needs to be done. So again, something that we didn't know would work, but worked beautifully in retrospect. And the last T, we're also 5 minutes away from closing. Enable is, I think, where reinforcement really happens outside of the learning program. So Saood, do you see organizations doing this? Is this an area where you're seeing a gap? What's your read?
Some organizations that are doing well, right, in the 5% that we had where they're able to do it at scale, they are enabling their employees at a continuous pace, at a continuous level, right? Because once you identify, just zoom out, you identify the right problem, you have a solution, and now you need to give that solution some time, right? You need to give them access to it, perennial access to it, where they're engaging with the tools, with the platform to solve their problems, and then come back and assess it, right? It's up to them when do they want to assess the impact, but it needs time, it needs patience, and everything of value, which we humans like and desire, like nature, billions of years, good food, good wine, good art, good books. It takes time, right? People are relentless. They are obsessed with what they want to do, and they spend time in doing that instead of just dropping things if they're not working in the first attempt. So yeah, this is very important, where learners are constantly engaged. And I spoke about the always on, right? They need to be they need to have that switch with them, that hey, I can turn it on, learn, engage, get some coaching, get some insights from this platform, this tool, or my mentor, whoever that is. I feel safe enough, and I go back to my work and I start demonstrating results as and when needed, as and when expected.
Absolutely. And I think it becomes really difficult at scale, right? To kind of look at enablement. How many coaches will you deploy? How much time will managers spend on coaching their teams, especially with the quantum of work that all of us are dealing with? And that's where the last case study kind of came up. We had a global IT services firm. They said we have 3,000 employees that we've hired within the last year. All of them analysts, need a lot of hand-holding. They understand the basics of AI. So we don't necessarily want to spend too much time on teaching them, but we want to make sure that there are certain behaviors that we want them internalized on the job. Obviously, the managers are doing their bit, but can you support us? So to do this, we kind of ran a whole self-paced journey. They went through a course to kind of revise what generative AI and AI looks like, played simulations as well, to make sure that we're able to see that learning translate. There aren't any gaps within their understanding. And we actually developed AI coaches for them, because deploying human coaches at that scale was just not feasible. And these AI coaches really helped the learners, one, on reflecting on the learning journey itself. So what have I learned? What was missing? What could I have done differently within the simulation? What can I take back to the job? And that's where I think a lot of value add came up, because when we ran a post survey with these learners once the journey was over, and we did these surveys twice, right? Once right after the simulation, and then again after the coaching, and we saw an increase in the scores after the coaching. And the second part to the coaching was, if I have a doubt and I don't necessarily want to go ask my manager, or I don't want to go ask an LLM, maybe I can't ask an LLM because it doesn't know what my policies are. I'm going to show it some data. The AI coach was also like a safe place for them to come and ask these doubts and really clarify what was working or what could work for them. So this was something we did last year, and we've been able to reach learners across 6 geographies for this company, and helped enable their early career professionals. And with that, Saood, I think we've reached the end of the webinar. I know we have a minute left. We'll make it 2 minutes. But that's the outcome that we're seeing, right? Where the 5% that are running AI better are actually running better capability programs. Or are running more intentional capability programs. So with that, any closing thoughts from you, Saood, on what you'd like to leave our audience with?
Well, if I have to pick one, then identify the right problem. AI is here, but identifying the right problem and staying with it, giving people everything that they need to solve that problem is what we can do as orchestrators of capability building, as orchestrators of performance readiness, and creating a larger value within our ecosystem, not just our clients.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that, Saood. And we're at the end of the hour. We will stay on for another few minutes. So in case you have any questions, any comments, any feedback for us, if you'd just like to connect with us, I think in the next few weeks and chat about what's going on, we're also happy to bounce off ideas. We'll be able to share who the clients were on a call privately. We won't be able to do it on the webinar. So do reach out. And there is also a poll on feedback. We'd love to hear from you on what worked, what didn't, and what we can do better for the next session. So let us know. And thank you.
You'll find, and you'll find a lot of engaging content if you follow our LinkedIn page. We keep posting our experiences, case studies, reports. So yeah.
Thank you, Elaine, for joining in. It was great having you. And thank you everyone for taking time out. I know 1 hour is a lot when you're just sitting there listening to 2 people talk, but we're thankful that you took time out.
Thank you. Thank you, Khyaati, and thank you, everyone. We look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. All right. I think we're at the end of the hour, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.